So as we record this on the 12th of June, there are currently 12 states that have protests staged against ICE and the current president, Donald Trump. And the reason that is relevant is because we're not going to bring this person's name up because they've since apologized, realized it was a pretty terrible idea that someone came up with the idea of, oh, let's create a romance where two lawyers meet and fall in love at a protest. And it really rubbed people the wrong way. And we're not here to discuss that. We're here to discuss at what point does it become okay to use major cultural events, not as just kind of like background, but as major plot points in your books, your movies, whatever. Um, you know, World War II, Vietnam. I myself and other millennia lived through, let's see, Oklahoma City bombing, 9/11, Columbine, COVID, all sorts of stuff. So it seems like there is a certain point at which it's okay to romanticize, if you will, certain events. But is it really ever okay? And where do we draw that line? Yash, I'm gonna start with you because I know you have some strong thoughts on this one.
I think yesterday when we were talking over the idea, we were saying how it was okay to write romance novels, especially set in certain eras. And I think it was you that brought up a certain war was not allowed in this space. Like it was this sort of unspoken rule.
Hmm.
And it was the Vietnam War, and we talked about how it seems like when there's a sense of imperialistic tendency from the American side. We find that off limits. And I'm wondering if now, with these protests, the reason why, and not just the only reason, the reason why we might say it's off limits is because the US is not on the good side right now. We're not on the right side of history. We're fighting against what feels like a monarchy at this point. And I mean, another point that was brought up by a PSC creator was that was this story to tell on her end? Um, this might have been better received if it were from someone of color who's directly affected, but there isn't a certainty that it would be. And I'm saying that as my own, like as a POC creator as well. I don't think that would have been a good idea for anyone right now. N No one can cope with it. No one can fully grasp how it's hurting them, even if you are POC. Um, I mean, I'm kind of saying that from a place of privilege. I personally cannot grasp how this is hurting my people as well. And that's kind of weird to say because it's like, shouldn't you know? And I'm like, well, there's a reason why everyone who's protesting is calling for people of color who are also of higher privilege to get out there and go talk for their rights. But, that's just Yashi's just rambling.
Beatrice, what about you?
Um,
You have a different perspective because the three of us grew up in this country. You you didn't. So,
I'll talk first. Like generally, wasn't really aware that like the romanticization like of things with content that like was created here in the States. Like there were things that were basically like of bounds. And I have just consumed content in general as like this is are things that are produced in different parts of the world, whatever. But it never fit in my brain. Like I never clicked until Yashi said it yesterday. Like, yeah, people usually don't do stuff about like the Vietnam War,
yeah.
but they do a lot of stuff about like
Well,
World War II, for example,
it
stuff like that.
it's interesting that there is actually a fair amount of stuff about Vietnam. However, it's portrayed in a particular way where it's usually, oh, people are suffering, whatever. World War II is different. And then there is another war that people don't tend to talk about, and that's the Korean War. There's tons of books and movies about Vietnam, tons of books and movies about World War II. You find very little mainstream pop culture about the Korean War, which,
And it's just like a very interesting perspective, like to know about this, to get to know about these things as an outsider, but also more on like the protests and everything, is a topic that is very delicate for me because even though I am not able to participate in protests right now because it would attempt against my safety, I participated in protests before. I have smelled tear gas. I have gotten injured because of being in protests. Like I have done a lot of I have gone through similar things that a lot of people are going through right now when I was back in Venezuela. And that's the whole point of why I'm in the US because I don't want to be killed. It would have happened. So it definitely made like personally like my mouth taste bad whenever I see someone that is trying to take something like this very so lightly, as in like this sounds like a good backdrop for a story that I want to create, because it when you put it like that, it doesn't really give the impression that you're coming from a place of understanding, and that can really like hurt the people that are fighting so hard to get their rights.
Hmm.
They like to be treated as like human beings. I am coming from a position of privilege because I am not going through that situation right now. I have the privilege of having a house in which I can take refuge and feel safe. I've been on the other side. I'm not there right now. There's a lot of people that don't have that privilege, that literally like their only option is to be fighting for their lives. And I don't think a lot of people that have the same privilege of like not having to do that understand really the effects that it can cause on like a human brain. Like I have seen people dead on the streets. Like it's my nephew, when he was 3 years old, the game that he liked to play was let's hide from the National Guard. Like these are things that are so normalized within ourselves because of like being used to like awful things, that when we see someone treating it as lightly because of really not knowing, because I'm not saying that it was done out of malice. I never thought that like thread, which also looks so casually, was out of malice. I feel like this person maybe saw everything that was happened and got inspired, as any other types of inspiration that can come from any situation ever in life. Uh kind of wanted to shoot their shot, but I would like, I don't know, people in general to kind of like stop and think for a second if the things that they are taking inspiration from are theirs to take, or if they know enough about the situation, if they know enough people that maybe they could ask how it would affect them, for example, if this thing would exist. It's extremely complicated. My brain's very scrambled. I see what's happening right now and I see pictures and I get flashbacks because it's very similar to the stuff that I have gone through. And I do know that I have had conversations with people here in the US that have told me, oh my God, I would have loved to be in Venezuela in the time of protest because I would have loved to be there and fight for my rights. No, you wouldn't have, because you wouldn't have wanted to see your friends get shot at. Like, it's that level of disconnection from the reality that I feel people are lacking. And that is where this idea of using events that are not necessarily like related to you for creative inspiration comes. And then it comes with the whole mishandling the whole thing because of the um not knowing. Yay. Sorry, I made it so dark. Oh.
Sabrina, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I was listening very carefully, and I heard from both Yashi and Beatrice that what they're seeing is a kind of a disconnect between what's currently happening and how it's affecting real people, like right now, and the story that the author wanted to write. And like I mean, I think Yashi said this in one of our Slack chats that it felt kind of like a coping mechanism, like a way for the author to kind of deal with some of the current events that are going on that are stressing everyone out.
Hmm.
Some people a lot more than others, but I think the tension that is all around the country right now is quite real, no matter who you are. Um, I'm seeing it as a coping mechanism, which writing has always been, that was used improperly. I think that the situation changes a lot if you had this woman looking at what's going on, seeing, an authoritarian government, seeing violence in the streets, and going, I have a fantasy world that I could really, I'll make a fantasy romance, a romantasy, if you will. Um, and it's going to be inspired by the events that are happening. And I'm going to look very closely at what's going on and see how people right around me right now are like responding and what they need and use all the strategies that I am participating in to inform me writing this work of fiction. I think making it a work of fiction could have saved a lot of the backlash that happened because it doesn't feel quite as tone deaf, for lack of a better term.
Do you think
But
that the topic that she chose of making a romance played a lot into it too?
yes, I do. But I also know that a romance setting in what do you call like a romance in an ad I hesitate to call it an adventure story, but bear with me here.
Like an action
Um,
story?
Yeah, like an action story where there are two young protagonists that are like fighting against the evil power and they fall in love. That's not new. That's been
Hmm.
shown in like it's basically a trope. It's just the wrong combination at the wrong time from the wrong person.
I also think that the way that it was presented was what was most tone deaf of it all. And it just kind of shows that maybe, honestly, I think it just shows that sometimes we have to keep our thoughts for ourselves and our ideas for ourselves until we develop them properly. Because maybe this would have been a story that would have been properly researched and good and like like some people would have felt connected to it. We don't know, but the way that I saw this particular one done in social media was like treated such so casually, like, what if I just do this?
Hmm.
In which it can be, especially because it's just like text, it's social media, it's very hard to see intent behind this kinds of things. It shows a lack of understanding of how serious this topic is. And something that you said, Tim, was that like we're talking a lot about topics that are recent, but I think this also makes sense with things that happened many, many, many years ago. If they are treated like with the same like lightness in a way, we were talking about like wars and then about things that like happened in history. Pretty sure if someone just casually said, oh my god, it would be so cute to write like a love story during the Holocaust in that very light tone.
So it's funny that you say that because I happen to know that there was similar stories right after the end of World War II in the form of propaganda. My sister watched one for a German class that she was taking, and it was um, I'm trying to think of, I'm sorry, let me try and get the details right. I believe it was a former Nazi who fell in love with someone who had just gotten off the train from a concentration camp,
Mm.
and they they did not um it, my sister was saying that it was so jarring for her to watch as like a modern viewer because they treated that horrific experience from the woman's side of view, right? Because she wasn't really a main character. She was more like just a convenient love interest. And they kind of had a forbidden love thing going on. But she was like, oh yes, I got back from that anyway. And like the rest of the story was all about the man.
It's
Oh
always
my God.
weird in any book or whatever where someone has a completely traumatic moment or experience and they just completely dismiss it. Like it made me think of a book I read recently where this woman comes in, this is obviously science fiction, comes in contact with this alien artifact and accidentally kills all the people on her ship with it. And then it's like never mentioned again. So
Oh my
um
God.
yeah, it was really weird because it was like her husband. So, it was kind of strange. But she hooked up with another guy. It was fine. Um so
I was
I
back really quick.
I mean, it took like half the book, but it happened. Um, so I guess obviously in the moment is not a good time, but even if she had positioned it as something like, hey, I want to write this book from the point of view of a white person who is trying to understand what this means to other people and taking part in it. Is there basically what I'm asking is there any way that she could have saved this? Like, is there any way this could have turned into a good idea, or is it because it is still so new and fresh and raw in our minds eh, that it's not okay. Like there needs to be time passed. We need to have an outcome.
I
I
have a
think
take too. Go first, Bia.
uh, that is my personal opinion that things shouldn't be extremely black and white. I believe that this could have, been saved and been a good idea as if, as we were saying, she like created the story from a point of understanding, from a point of respect, from a point of maybe like using her privilege to expand the knowledge about these things, to let other people that maybe are not aware know that these things are happening, even if it's in a romance setting. In my opinion, I have read a lot of very good romance books that still have a very strong um point that like teaches you like values and like ethics and like tells you how the world looks in that particular like set of time. I have been seeing, and we have all been seeing in social media with the years passing, that more and more people take extreme takes on a lot of situations because of we be us all, and we are also culprits of doing that. I think everyone, uh, because we are just used to a lot of shit being thrown at us, or like people being evildoers or everything. I agree that the way that she was speaking about that was not appropriate. I felt very uncomfortable, but I also I don't agree with the people saying, get the fuck out, you're white, you don't know nothing about it. Because in reality, the same way that like you're saying that this person doesn't know anything about the people that are being affected by it, you don't know if the person had an intent of knowing about it, if she knows people that have been affected by it. Like you cannot really gauge people's intentions and just satanize someone like that. If obviously you're coming from a point of like having a dialogue with this person and the person says, oh, I don't give a fuck, then that's different. But judging someone because of that not great like idea, but like I don't think we should satanize people for just having an idea, even if it's a bad one, even if
And
it's tone deaf.
correct me if I'm wrong,
It's
but she got canceled pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
awful. Yeah, no, it
the
was super, super hard.
cover
And
artist stopped working with her. Some vendors who were going to sell her book canceled and
Hmm.
are not. They also have offered refunds to anyone who bought her books and wants to return them.
I I think the part of it that made me so sad about the whole situation is that most of the discourse that I saw online, a lot of the some of the discord was very well explained, as in like the reasons why this is not a good idea. But a lot of people were just saying, again, basically paraphrasing what I said, you don't know anything, you're white. And I think that is an extreme problem because why are we judging someone by the color of their skin in the same way that we're being judged? Like, like it's not black and white. Um, I have been accused of like not talking about what I should be talking because my skin is fair. So that's also like I've been in that position of like, what do you know about Latin America? You're white. I'm from there. So it's the same idea of like people jumping to conclusions without even attempting to see the situation, to create their own opinion about it, and just repeating like everything that other people are saying in an echo chamber and becoming worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Well, another thing that made me a little uneasy about the strong reactions that people had um, was that if you do go back to the original posts that caused the whole um, debacle, it was phrased in the form of a question. It may not like the premise not great, okay? The the intent behind posting online seems to have been to get more information about what things are actually like, or like where the legal limits for certain actions are. And it was in service of a plot, but I also have to wonder, if this author didn't know where else to go and decided to just put out a genuine question to the internet, even if it was a tone deaf question, it's kind of crazy to me that that one moment would have such a, I guess, a dramatic effect on,
Yeah.
I don't know, it felt like it came from a genuine curiosity place, and it also, I
Yeah.
suppose that's
I mean, I
I'm
think
gonna
there's
get some hate on the comments because I myself am a white woman, but
I mean, I think there's obviously a lot of pent up anxiety at the moment, and I think she just became an unfortunate target. And it's one of those things that we have talked about a number of times, usually in the frame of reference of AI, of, if you see someone that you don't agree with, don't just yell at them and call them an idiot and whatnot. Educate them. Because if you just are horrible to them, they're going to lean further into their stance as opposed to you can educate them and they can learn something. So, and I'm sure there are people out there who try to do that, but it seems like the majority of the internet went the super aggressive route. And Yashi, I know you had something, so I want to get back to you.
I was going to say, one of my things is because I'm not physically able to protest, I'm actually an educator. I learn a lot about history, and whenever someone asks a question, it is my thing to talk to them about it and answer any of their questions. Um, Sabrina did show us the original comment, and yes, it was phrased as a question. That is something I would have personally messaged her about and talk as much to my knowledge as possible and as advise, hey, maybe this isn't your story to tell. I understand that you're probably under a lot of stress right now. Like this country is on fire. Um, a lot of us are anxious, and it's not just people of color, and it's literally white people too, because this is your country on fire as well. Um, it's a lot of it could have been like hope and a need for cope being misplaced. As everyone has mentioned, I really think the blowback she's been dealing with is almost unfair. And in a sense, hypocritical. We constantly call for white people or those with privilege to help us, to talk about our situation. And when this person who's trying to talk about a situation from her eyes, um, did so by asking a question, and again, it wasn't asked a correct way. Um, she was met with a bit too much hatred that feels a bit uncomfortable for me in a sense.
I feel like
Um,
the oh, sorry, go,
no, no,
go.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, you had a point.
No, I was gonna say like I don't think we should be calling for help and asking other people to tell us their point of views from their eyes and then berate them for it so harshly. Um, that's my thing. I mean, I would say like maybe this wasn't her story to tell. Maybe it should have been a POC doing it. But I kind of wanted to see a story from a white person's perspective. How is this hurting you guys? Why is it hurting you guys? That for so long, I guess I'd never been able to see that point of privilege in a sense. And that sounds so demeaning. I'm so sorry. It's not supposed to be. But I never understood how you guys suffer when you see your friends also suffering. I guess that's my point.
Real quick,
But
I do want to read the original post. So, well, do we want to read the post? Would that help people track it down, or has it been removed already? It's been removed,
It's
right?
been removed.
I
Okay.
think it'd been removed.
Okay, so the original post says, so the characters are trying to tell me their story, but I have some legal questions. If you are taken into custody at a protest, not actually arrested, and you have a backpack where you have padlocked it shut, can law enforcement legally force it open? If you're recording at the protest, can they seize the devices and watch the footage there? If excuse me, if there is clear writing on it that belongs to a law firm. Thanks. Um, and then the other post is, man, I wish I could plot a novel. I so want to write one about a couple who goes to protest ICE together.
You know, um, piggybacking a little bit on what Joshua was saying, I feel like in general, whenever you're touching a topic that is real and has affected real people, it doesn't matter if it affected like a like an amount of people, like something like what is happening right now, or like not even like politics related, but like COVID, like what you mentioned, Tim, and all of that. You always have to come from a place of respect, especially if
Hmm.
like you are trying to commercialize that project into like some capacity. I think it's different if you want to journal about something as a way to process your thoughts and how you feel about a situation versus if you want to but like write a book and then commercialize about it. No matter what, it has to come from like that intention of like respect, humility, wanting to know the story, like all of those things. um but as long as it comes from that, I personally believe that anyone should be able to write those stories. I really, really wish that there was someone from here that was like a famous author and had the privilege of like having a platform, talking about how sometimes when something is happening in another country and your family's there, you go for weeks not knowing if they're alive. Because I know if I told that story, it wouldn't have the same reach because maybe I don't have that same privilege. So that's kind of like what I personally wish that this whole situation would have developed into. She seemed to be someone that had already some sort of like position in the within the publishing industry, and like it could have whatever she would have written if it came from all of this places of making people more aware of how cruel this situation is, it would have like made a positive change. It is sad to see that probably we're never going to know how it would have ended because it became very extreme very, very quickly online. But I don't think we should police people and tell them what they can and cannot create without hearing their intentions behind
Mhm.
of that.
I'll actually go a step further. It's not just this one book that we will not see come
That's true.
become whatever it would have become. Um, Seeing this kind of discourse online and all of the hate, and I will say hate because it went way beyond the action of the author and into very personal territory very quickly. Um, it it's gonna show anyone else that was thinking about writing a similar kind of story that this is not a safe place to publish that, or this is not a safe place to even ask about that. I also have to wonder, just only like a little bit tangential, do you know if the legal questions she was asking like ever got answered? Because they those are kind of, I'm curious to know. And that could actually have an impact on people who are going out
Mhm.
into
I
the
was
thick of
gonna
things.
say it's it's sad because people would have benefited of that knowledge. And maybe it would have been something, like the legalities of everything. For example, when they started checking phones and stuff from people that were flying here or like flying out of here. I'm way more in tune with the situation in Venezuela than in here because of my whole family's there. But it started becoming known through social media, and a lot of people were able to get themselves be safer and be more intentional with the things that they did thanks to that. So I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, people that again probably with the best interest of the community in mind were going against this by the extremism of the situation also hurt us.
I mean, even if she'd written this book, it probably wouldn't have been out for a year or so. Um, and hopefully this situation will be resolved before then. But do you think it's because she did it while it's happening? Do you think if after this had all been resolved, maybe let's say we're in our next presidential administration, God willing, we have another presidential administration, um, and then she had been asking these questions, do you think people would have reacted as strongly?
I think depending on the way that she asked.
True.
I also saw a lot of upset about the commodification of the story.
Hmm.
The fact that it would be benefiting ultimately a white woman. And I do know that one of the things that the author had said was that all the funds from it would go towards nonprofits that were, um, I don't remember what specifically she said about the nonprofits. I think they were supposed to be helping folks who were protesting on the ground or something like that. Um, I don't know. It's a really good question.
So, I mean, obviously, because it's race related, it becomes very particular. Um, but like, what about other cultural moments? Does it ever become okay to talk about those? Like, for example, it's been almost 24 years since 9/11. Is that okay to use? I mean, I know there's been a couple movies about it, but is it once it becomes race related, we get into a very slippery slope depending on who the author is. Because I mean, then you
This,
also have COVID. What do we
I
do about
know.
COVID? Like it's been used in the backdrop of a number of novels, but can you use it as your main plot device? Like where do
So
we draw that line and is it fair to draw a line?
this is going to be probably my hot take of the episode, but I think that we can't avoid talking about awful things.
Mm,
Um, I think we can't police people talking about awful things, even if they're not talking about them the way that we think they should. If we start silencing the discussion about particular events because they're painful or because they are charged, whether that's like racially charged or politically charged or whatever, then we let the people who are going to be trying to control that narrative like free access to talk about it however they are wanting to talk about it. If that means the 9/11 jokes happen, and I know they do on Insta, and it's quite insensitive, but comedy is a coping mechanism. Comedy is another very, very powerful way of expressing ideas and criticisms and satire. So be it, you know? I don't think that any topic should be so taboo that you are not allowed to be wrong when you say something about it. Does that
I think
you have to
It makes
talk if you want to
sense.
be corrected, you
if
know?
that and I think the other thing that you were kind of touching on is that if we don't talk about it, someone else will rewrite the narrative. And they always say that history is written by the winners, but sometimes history is written by those who are willing to talk about it.
I can talk about one novel that we've been talking about a little bit. It was The 10 Incarnations of Rebellion, was it? And it talks about the freedom fighters in India during colonial Britain. And I bring this up because India's history is rarely talked about and it is seen as taboo very often. And it gets rewritten and demonized in a sense to the point where it's harmful for the people. Sometimes it's more harmful to not talk about a situation than it is to talk about a situation. And I kind of wanted to bring up, as we were talking about this, is that we've lost what it means to be human. It became so marred by color because that's what we were taught to do. It's difficult to bring up a situation that is, as in, I'm going to quote it like this, racially charged because we have to see things as black and white. And if we're not talking about things, we're just going to have another instance in which our history is rewritten, made more harmful, and creating stereotypes for people like Beatrice and I when it shouldn't have been that way to begin with. But that's just my hot take.
Art has always going to be a beautiful way to communicate life, humanity, and just history in general. And art can come in many ways. I learned the reality of the political situation in my country through comedians when I was a teenager because it was the only thing that was digestible for me at the time to grasp, and that helped me make my own decisions into how I stood, and eventually it helped me realize what I wanted to know more about. It helped me realize where I stood in like life as a person. Eventually that's what made me decide to protest because I didn't agree with the people being treated unfairly. And in my case, it was comedy. In different cases for different people, it will be different types of art. It can be paintings, it can be digital art, it can be books, it can be anything else that can bring the situation across, especially for people that maybe are not really aware that these things happen. It's a lot of what Sabrina and Jashi and I think you, Tim, also said that the like you have to be willing to talk about it, but also you have to be willing to sit down and listen when other people are trying to talk about it as well. If that is disrespectful, then you can call it out. but at least give people the opportunity of saying their story, their voice, trying to express it, trying to learn. It's it's so sad because we see how we are becoming, because of, again, and I keep saying extremism in social media because it's what I keep like seeing everyone, that people are starting to just become safe in their echo chambers and then they don't go out anywhere else. So if you're not willing to listen to the other person that maybe is not exactly the same as you, even if the opinions that the other person has do not have the full story, how is the other person going to know the full story if you're not giving them a chance for to listen, to talk? If you want other people that are not in your immediate surroundings to listen to what is happening, to expand the voice, you also have to be willing to give the others a chance. And only when you have given them a chance, you can decide this was extremely tone deaf. You definitely shouldn't be doing this. I don't know, informed yourself, block them, whatever you want. But that chance has to exist up to some capacity. And this is not to say that we have to put up with people no matter what. At the end of the day, it's everybody's personal choice. And not everyone is at the right mental capacity to have these very difficult conversations in social media or in real life. And I don't think anyone should be forced to educate people, but it's kind of like a wake up call of like, hey, maybe consider that you could be willing to listen to what the other person has to say first and then judge instead of judging and assume everything.
Even with Beatrice and I having these opinions or just talking about the issue the way we are right now, it could have negative consequences to both of us. And it's important that we remember that people are often willing to learn and listen. And I know if Beatrice and I say something that other POC are thinking, hey, maybe this isn't right, this isn't the take you should have, or you're coming from a place of a little bit more privilege than the people who are affected right now. If they explain that to us, I am almost certain we're gonna be like, you know what? You're probably right. That's understandable. Um, I don't know if that's the HRMA talking. I'm taking your job, Tim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, good luck.
But yeah, I'm not good at it. But at the same time, it's just like I also feel like it needs to be said multiple times that we're all here to listen and respond to people's like concerns and what have you, because it's difficult out there and just canceling people for talking about their opinions right now is not the way to go. It's only going to make these situations worse. It's only going to heighten the anxiety. It's not helping.
Let's clarify one point though. Canceling people for their opinions, no. When their opinions are things like trans people don't exist, cancel the fuck out of them because
Yeah,
that's not
yeah,
an
please do.
opinion.
It's okay to punch Nazis.
It
Yeah,
is
you could do that
absolutely.
too.
Make Captain America proud of you. Punch a Nazi.
Please do.
Is
And
that from a meme,
AI.
Tim?
Yeah, I saw it on a meme.
Oh, I thought
It
it
was
was
like,
a Tim
no,
original.
it was like a text thread between Captain America and Iron Man. He's like, "What happened when I was frozen?" It's like, "Why can't I punch Nazis now?" And he's like, "Was it Facebook? Is this Facebook's fault?" And I'm like, yeah, kind of. But
That's quite funny.
I'll
um,
have my hot take on please don't use AI or because of environmental concerns and stuff,
yeah.
but don't punch people for that.
Um, so we've learned a lot today. We've had some deep and somewhat dark conversations. I don't know if you got the answers you were looking for in this video, but if not, I hope you at least listened and learned something new. So on that note, publishers behaving badly. It's not you, it's them.